Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. What better way to talk about metal than to talk about it with the great, the marvelous, even, Kristian Kohle, especially when holding a jazz guitar. Kristian, how are you?
I'm great. At least it's dark red, right? Blood red.
Yeah, blood red.
No, I'm doing great. It has been a while that I've been on this channel. I'm very happy to be back.
You've done some incredible studio tours with us, like some really good ones. That one from Sweden was...
Atlantis, yeah, Studio Atlantis. That was the ABBA studio.
And we have to find the time at some point, Kasia and I, to fly over there and do our own tour. Although you did such an incredible job that...
You don't have to anymore. No, you should. It's a great place, and Stockholm is a wonderful city as well.
Well, you would know, seeing as you have a lot of connection to Sweden.
Yeah, being half Swedish even, having family in Stockholm, I'm there quite often.
So maybe that's what makes you ultra death metal. Because you've got the German side, so you've got all the German metal bands, and then, of course, you've got the connection to all the Swedish bands.
Maybe, yeah, that helps.
If you only had an Icelandic cousin, you'd be completely covered.
I think Finland is has the highest density of metal bands in the world.
I think every male under the age of 30 is in a metal band in Finland. Yeah.
Right.
I suppose, I've done a billion, well, maybe it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of mic demos over the years. And I tend to do stuff. I've done a Black Sabbath song or two, but not really metal. There's a big conversation to be had here when it comes to miking. Like, is there specific microphones that are genre based? I think the one that I think most of us know about is the Audix. What is it, a D6?
Yes.
I mean, I use a D6 when available, when traveling studios, because it will give me that massive attack.
Oh, yeah.
But that's probably the only thing that jumps out to me that I can think of that is something that is loved by metal.
It is maybe the most metal sounding mic out there. And I mean, for a reason, because I believe metal is probably the most distorted, the most dense genre of them all. I think there are actually two types of microphones that work for metal, and one direction you can go is actually the Audix D6, and those are microphones that really cut through a dense mix, that are like bright and snappy and aggressive sounding. It depends on the source, obviously. So there are sources like kick drums or maybe all drum shells where you need exactly that type of microphone just to cut through. Then there are other sources that might just sound aggressive enough by nature, like, I don't know, harsh vocals or, cymbals, if they, drummers bash them hard, stuff that already sounds quite piercing. And here you might want to go for something more gentle or something more smooth or forgiving, and maybe less bright, a little darker, maybe even less detailed, You don't need the most detailed mic for a death metal singer. You might want to go for something like an SM7. So it depends. Some sources need the extra and some need the opposite.
Dan Mausch just sent me something that has Mike Mangini playing drums on it, so from Dream Theater, and he broke down the mix. And what was interesting was, like, I scoop out low mids out of drums. Of course I do. I take out 350 quite wide out kick drum, same thing with toms and everything. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm happy to be wrong, but it seems like metal is even more scooped.
Oh, yeah.
D6 is doing a lot of that. What specific microphones do you think that you're using on snare and toms? Or are you using similar mics to what a normal rock/pop engineer would use?
It depends, I would say. Well, we could go through my drum shell microphones, and I thought, like, because I knew you would ask that question, I was like, maybe I want to give people not only a classic, but also something I have just recently found. We've heard about the D6, and the D6 is a total safe bet. So if you don't know what to do and you want to go for a clicky metal kick drum sound, I think the D6 is your perfect companion for that, but it is very much a one-trick pony. So it pushes you into one direction very much because it sounds hyper scooped. You go from heaven to hell and back. One mic that I have just used like a week ago for the first time, and that impressed me, is the new kick mic from Austrian Audio. Large diaphragm condenser mic. It sounds like it has a very, wide frequency response, and it sounds rather neutral, but I was able to EQ it to sound like a D6 in 30 seconds. So that is more of like a blank canvas or something, where you can go into a D6 territory, but you can also go somewhere else. If you're not sure that you want to have that total scoop metal tone, that's maybe a safer bet. Yeah, it's just cool because it seems to pick up, like has a high resolution, if you know what I mean. And you can like tweak it with an EQ easily wherever you want to go. So that mic is quite interesting.
I can't help think, because we just did that UAD, the virtual mics.
Yeah.
And well, they're not. They're just like a regular good sounding mic that you can then shape, using their software to sound like different classic mics. But the first thing I did is I played the uneq'd flat versions of the mics that Blair's used over the last 10 plus years and those. And the difference wasn't that much.
Okay.
I do wonder, I think what you're pointing to, and I want you to take the floor, obviously, rather than me talking about this, but a good sounding flat mic with decent SPL, obviously, that's probably the most important thing. I think you're implying can be shaped to do pretty much anything.
If you know what you're doing, that is maybe the problem. So if you don't know how to turn that Austrian audio mic into a D6, you better just get the D6, So, but the like you said, if you know what you're doing, a more neutral mic is more versatile. On the other hand, sometimes it's just nice and easy to have a mic that like pushes you into the right direction. I just found another microphone that really surprised me on toms and also on snare. I have been using SE Electronics V7X microphone, which for me is some kind of better or more modern 57. That kind of tone, dynamic microphone pointed at the better head. You get a lot of punch, but a little more modern, a little more snappy and fast sounding than a 57. V7X, great microphone for that. But recently I found this clip-on mic from Biodynamic called, I think, D57, and it's one of those gooseneck clip-on microphones, and I used it by accident, and it sounded so different. It's a condenser mic. It sounds super snappy, lots of highs, lots of rolled off mids, and I was switching between the mics on toms, but also on snare, and I was like, oh my God, this is so different. But I really enjoyed it because it sounded so mix ready. I've never used any Biodynamic clip-on mics before, but this is a recommendation, especially if you have like big toms or like a low tuned snare. But sometimes you just got to be pushed out of your comfort zone and go like, wow, this sounds so different. Can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? And that's the fun of recording.
Did the clip-on mics pick up the low lows on the toms?
Yeah, that was fun. It sounded great. The only downside is they're cardioid, like the Audix mics and the more modern like SE Electronic mics. They are all hypercardioid, so the bias pick up more of the cymbal bleed. On the other hand, my impression was that the cymbal bleed actually sounds quite nice, or the opposite of an MD421, like this, you don't get this nasty.
Yeah, JJ always talks about that. The problem with the 421 is not that it sounds good on a tom, it just doesn't sound good when the cymbal bleed comes in.
Exactly. So my impression of those Biodynamic mics was, okay, they pick up more cymbals, but they don't sound like shit. So you can tolerate a little more. And as we both know, cymbal bleed is getting less and less of a problem with all those modern, Sonox drum gates and depleter plugins. So
kind of goes counterintuitive. I thought the reason why people, especially in live, use the clip-on mics is because they had better rejection from cymbal bleed. So you're saying actually you've got more cymbal bleed in it. It's giving you say mix ready, meaning it's a little bit more scooped, yes?
It's more scooped. It sounds faster. It sounds a little more like a condenser. I'm usually not a big fan of condensers on drum shells because they sound a little, I can't describe it, a little too spiky or something, or have like a weird transient response. But this one seems to sit in between. It's great on toms. I've just recorded it on snare as well for the first time and it sounded good, but on the snare I still had like a dynamic backup mic because I wasn't sure. But last week I was recording like a big Ludwig set with like 16 and 18-inch toms, and I used the bias and it sounded awesome. Bias mics are great. They're very much under the radar for a lot of people.
What about bass guitar? I know a lot of people these days just use the DI and split it and then put an amp tone on one and use the DI for the clean low end. Myself, I've done that many times, but normally out of necessity, I prefer to mic up an amp. I like the randomness of having an amp and having a player, give me something that I couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
But if you are miking an amp, What do you use?
I hardly mic real cabs anymore. With guitars, I do that all the time. With bass, not that often. But when I do that, what I want from the cab is not the low end, because I can get that from the DI a lot more easily. I want some kind of like overdriven, dirty tone, like distortion. And then I treat the bass pretty much like I treat a guitar. So I think I'm pretty much using the same microphones. I also like using guitar cabinets for this, because they, bass speakers are more hi-fi, they have more highs, and if you distort the bass, it often sounds harsh. So I just typically just mic a guitar cab with the typical guitar microphones, which leads us into guitar microphones, because for me that's the same thing. And I'm a 57 guy. Like many, it's very boring, but like many people, 57, I guess we're just so used to how a 57 sounds in front of a driven speaker. But lately, I have also found another mic that really surprised me, and I was forced to use it because the Telefunken guys, we did this thing called MetalCon in Berlin, using a lot of microphones there, and then Telefunken asked me like, hey, why don't you try our kick drum microphone on a guitar cab? And I told them, it's probably going to suck, it's probably going to sound scooped, and that's not what I want for guitar, so you don't want that. They said, like, why don't you try it? And then I tried it. I even did a video about it, and I was blown away how good the Telefunken, I think, M82 kick mic, which also sounds nice on kick, sounds on guitar. Incredible. So if anyone out there owns one of those microphones, turn off all the filters. I think there's a scoop and there's a high boot. So turn off all that stuff and try it on a guitar cab or on a bass cab, and it sounds fantastic. So this has been my latest discovery, Telefunken M82. But on a desert island, 57. Like you, right?
Do I think the 57 is the best sounding snare mic? No. But does it give me the best rejection, and I can also make it sound like a snare that I want to? It's a real tough one, because small diaphragm or a large diaphragm condenser on a snare is amazing. The best snare sample I ever got was an 87 pulled back on a snare, and the guy hit it once and it just sounded like everything. I got the top, the body, the rattle and air, and it just was like, oh my God, why am I not recording snare like this? Well, I'm not recording snare like this because it would pick up everything else bleeding into it. It's that compromise. How do you get a clean snare hit? I will say, going back to your first point about flat mics working really, really well, is with all these incredible tools like the Oxford Drumgate 2, which we both reviewed, is so good that I'm just mixing something for the Last International. Lovely band, great, heavy, like really, but more like punk rock heavy, this track.
Okay.
And they recorded the drums at a show. And I don't mean a show playing to an audience. They recorded it like in a sound check. The snare mic almost completely disappears. I think there's some kind of thing. I don't know if the snare mic was moving away or the, I don't know what was going on. With the drum gate, I was able to make it be a real snare again. I was able to find all the snare hits, even though they were like only this loud in the middle of everything, and just exaggerate them and bring them out.
We're spoiled with all these tools. Don't forget, the most important thing is to get things right at the source. And if you don't need drum gate or anything else,
agreed.
And also sometimes it's just cool to like with the Telefunken microphone, to get surprised. What I said about the Bayer microphones as well. We've been doing this for so long, so I'm always full of respect for people who try other things. When I was in LA this year in January, I was at a studio called The Pit with a metal producer called Taylor Young. We were actually filming a guitar recording course with him where he shows how he mics cabs and blends them. And that guy is doing so many crazy things. So I was like in between shocked and impressed all the time. And so he's like, I don't know, making the backside of an open cab. He's like sending the DI into several amps at the same time and several cabs and just blending a lot of mics. And he's using mics I've either never seen before. I was like, what is this mic? What is that mic? What is that? Like some weird microphones. Or he was using mics that people normally don't use for guitars. So he was, for example, using the Rode Podcaster or Procaster or some kind of mic intended for something like this on a guitar cab. And it sounded great. And then he pulled out some ribbon mics from a company called Extinct Audio. Never heard of them. Look awesome. And used those microphones. He wasn't using a single 57 and he was not using a single Celestion V30. And that was so refreshing. But he's known for getting really, I would call them sludgy, evil tones, like far away from the generic modern metal tone. He's working with a lot of like sludgy or punk or death metal bands, and we filmed him working with a death metal band from Texas called Tribal Gaze, and he's reamping the guitars, and he's just doing a lot of very unconventional stuff. I think it's a 3-hour course where he goes from the DIs to the final guitar tone and bass tone. And he's also miking the bass caps, like I told you, doing a lot of stuff you haven't seen before. So if anybody out there needs some inspiration, I'm sure Warren will put a link below to the course.
There will be a link below to the course. So obviously one of the main reasons why we've worked together for the last few years, at least from my perception, is like I felt like when I went online and was looking for information on metal recording, you were the only guy I found that actually did it for a living, number one, as well as having a channel where, you know, most of the channels we know are built around influencers. So that really spoke to me. But also the fact that you have this understanding. And whenever I talk to anybody about you, I say, well, the uniqueness of Kristian is that he does know how to use virtual amps. He does know how to use, he knows how to program drums. In fact, you even do a hybrid recording on drums, but you also know how to put mics in front of something and capture great performances. And I think that makes you very, very unique, which is why, you know, the Kohle Audio Cult, your academy, is the best out there, because you cater to all of those different ideas, you blend them all together, and you have something which is really, I don't need to say really, because the word itself is unique, where everywhere else I go, there's a very, dogmatic approach to it. Like, this is the way it's done. Like I think you intimated earlier in the conversation, modern metal has a tendency to sound identical from band to band to band.
Oh, yeah.
And even inside of the band, you know, putting on an album, I'm like, do I have to hear the same drum sound on every single song?
That's why I appreciate people like Taylor Young. You might like his sound or not, but it is definitely different and recognizable. And that has become so important these days. It's not so much about being good, you know, or about being tight, or even about being perfect. It's more about having character, about having style, about having some kind of attitude in metal, because anybody can pull out some, you know, great sounding drum libraries and some amp sims and presets and get like something decent. But that's boring. So I like to go beyond that. And now also with AI coming more and more, I think that's the future for engineers. You gotta be different.
That is the biggest thing. I mean, it's every conversation, isn't it? Every single conversation. I'm sure you had it about 25,000 times at MetalCon. What's so interesting about being at Superbooth of all places, where it's all like, you know, synths and stuff like that. You think that it's going to be all about digital this and digital that. No, it's not at all. Everybody's creating these analog synthesizers, analog pieces, or even digitally controlled analog equipment. But all of this stuff to make things more random, more interesting, because everybody is aware that AI is just leveling everything out. Yeah. I mean, we did it to ourselves, didn't we? We did it to ourselves by everything being so perfectly in time and in tune that AI can so easily copy. I mean, I bet if I went to Suno now and said, you know, create a modern metal track and then listed like 10 bands on 10 things, it would get probably quite close, wouldn't it? But it wouldn't have that kind of twisted, kind of like dragged groove, like it wouldn't be able to do any of that. It would all just be like this perfect.
Yeah. So let's overcome perfect, and let's try to be different. Let's try to be unique. Check out Kohle Audio Cult. Check out my academy if you want to be different. Join us.
Join us. Well, I mean, it's a great way in. Get the Taylor Young course. The thing about Kristian, the way that you do it is you can buy any individual courses. You've got lots of great mutual friends of ours, like Nolly and Jens and Bob Marlette and Ulrich Wilde, like guys that made records all the way through the 90s as well. So you've got quite a wealth of stuff, you know, Pantera and all of this amazing stuff that these guys did. If you join, you get all of those courses included, which is insane.
Which is, I think, close to 90 courses now or something, and all the multi-tracks, a lot of big bands like we recently did Slaughter to Prevail, we did Carcass, Bloodbath, Opeth, so many more, so from all metal genres. So if you join, you've got a lot of fun stuff to do. I hope to see you there.
Is that the only mic you're using, what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that is the...
Because I'm hearing...
That was just some workers in the house drilling. So this mic picks up.
What mic is it?
This is the JZ Black Hole, which sounds wonderful on my voice. Talking about JZ, it was actually you, and I think it was also Nolly, introducing me to one microphone that has now turned into my other Desert Island microphone, a microphone that just sounds incredible on any source, and that is the V67 that they make. That's my new overhead microphone. You can even use it on guitar cabs, where I'm not a big fan of condensers, but it sounds really good. I used it in a recent video as well. For talking. I think you've been using it on acoustic guitar. I'm so impressed by that microphone. Whatever they did there, it's an awesome microphone. V67. That is, I think, that's my current absolute favorite. I'm blown away.
I agree entirely. Plus, this is a people business. We love working with them as people, and you ask them about their mics and they send you something to try and it always delivers. Keep it simple, stupid, as they say,
Yeah, and they're quite affordable, and I mean they don't look super impressive, but I think that especially the 67 is, if you're out there, like if you need one microphone to record vocals and some other stuff, and later can go stereo. I also remember when I was recording drums with Gomez in Porto, he was using the 67s as room mics. Also sounded fantastic. I'm really impressed, and they're quite affordable.
I will say, talking to microphone companies and stuff, we talk about Austrian. We love what they do. I think that the OCS10, that's my mic where I use to speak into now. I absolutely love that mic.
That's a big one, right?
Yeah, they're big-ish ones.
Yeah.
But I can't get past the U87 as just being kind of. It's funny because every person that brings out a microphone is going to call it a 47, 67, or 87.
Yeah. Because
we're paying homage to the greatest microphone company of all time, which of course is Neumann. And don't think anybody disputes that. Or if they did, why would they call their microphones 47, 67, 87? You know what I mean? So the question is there room in your setup for an 87, for instance? Do you still use one?
Not that much. I just got a 67, actually, for the first time.
Wow.
So I borrowed one, yeah, and I'm going to record vocals with it tomorrow, or I'm going to shoot it out against a modern Neumann. So the singer coming in tomorrow, he always brings his own microphone, one of those modern TLM ones, which also sounds great, and we're going to do a shootout against the 67. But of course, and that's probably going to be a video on my channel, I'm also going to make a U67 versus V67 shootout. Just because I have to. Does that make sense? Maybe not, because, it's a tube mic versus a condenser mic, blah, blah, blah. And the V67 is not trying to replace the other one, but it's just too, the two numbers just make me do it. You know what I mean? And the V67 also being such a versatile mic, and the 87 and the 67 being versatile mics, I think that's going to be quite interesting.
We did spend some time at Neumann a week ago, and we started in Berlin because we were there for Super Booth. So we went back to the headquarters and we talked to one of their head designers there, and also happens to be a historian who loves all things Neumann. And so we got to talk about the evolution of the 87, because that's something I wanted to talk about, because the reason for me I bring that up is when I interview great producers, engineers, etc., I always say to them, if you had one or two microphones to make a record, what would they be? And everybody, Al Schmidt, Ed Cherney, you name it, all of these classic guys, Hugh Padgham, Steve Lillywhite, always say an 87 and a 57, I can make any album.
Yeah, of course, I could do an album with an 87 and a 57 too. In my case, it would rather be a C414. Like my go-to. Yeah, that's also the other mic I use.
Because you've got the hypercardioid pattern on it?
So yes, it has hypercardioid, and it has figure of 8, and it has a lot more patterns than an 87. So it is quite versatile. It has a 20 dB pad, can be used on loud sources, sounds great on drums, on guitars. It's one of those mics, one of those forgiving mics that maybe is never the perfect mic, but it kind of never sucks either. So that would be actually preferred compared to the 87, which sounds a little more mid-rangey. But hey, both works.
It's interesting. Because the 414 is one of those microphones I think is a completely versatile mic, and it's probably AKG's competitor to an 87. But there's so many instances I can't use it. Like on most vocalists, it's not that great. I don't know why that is. I remember reading something, and this is not your genre or mine, but like a pop R&B mix, and I'm blanking who it is, somebody really famous. And they said whenever they get a vocal they don't like the sound of, they always find out it's a 414.
Okay.
I think 414 is a bad microphone.
No.
They're just saying they don't think it's a great microphone for every singer. Whereas
And again,
Devon,
It depends on the source. In metal, very often, especially in extreme metal, you have those really aggressive, raspy, harsh voices where you need something that is a little more forgiving, a little smoother. And for those cases, you know, you don't want maybe a C800 or a C12 or something super airy and super detailed, because you don't want to hear those details and all those highs. So in those cases, 414 actually works pretty well. But then again, this is a very special, unusual type of singing, you know.
I've done metal sessions, I've done modern stuff, but nowhere like you. And I always,
No pig squeals and tortured animals and stuff. Yeah.
I just thought whenever, because I've got a 47, and when I put the 47 up, we'd always ended up with like an SM7 or something like that. Is that even a microphone that gets used in metal anymore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the good thing about the SM7B is that you can get close. So I use it whenever singers prefer to hold the mic in their hands. As we all know, if that makes them perform better, let them do it.
Sure.
And the SM7B, compared to most other handheld mics, because the capsule is like a little more further away from the grill and from your mouth, it is more forgiving. It doesn't sound like that much. So that is my go-to mic for anything handheld. It's pretty heavy, so it's also a workout if you do that.
And then, of course, there's the cupping the mic. Boom, ching, cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have learned it now from Glenn. Yeah.
But the question is like, if that's a sound that people do, and they want to get like this. I mean, I get it. Don't cup the mic for hi-fi. But I'm asking, is it a sound that some people do where they...
I mean, there are some people who do weird stuff, especially like in death metal. Then we have had singers here who sing through guitar pedals, and they have a pitch shifter and they have a distortion, you know. So this is very far away from what you just call hi-fi normal kind of singing. So in that case, if that combination of cupping the mic and going into a weird whammy or pitch shifter is the sound, there's nothing wrong about it.
I'm going to try and be kind and gentle, not with you, but just to people who may misunderstand what I'm saying. But I noticed with successful professionals, they just deal. We just deal with whatever. Somebody comes in and they're cupping a mic. They're going through a guitar pedal. They're doing, like Dave Jordan taught me this. Because I remember when I first started working with him as an engineer, I would say, well, Dave, you know, do you take a clean DI or do you record the amp on the guitar without all of the pedals and the delays? Because the guy wants to do stereo delays, and where you've got better, you know, I'd look over to his rack and he had lexicons and AMSs and all of the stuff you'd expect, Roland, you know, digital delay lines. And he's like, no. I just record the sound they bring me, even if it's not the easiest way of doing it, even if it's not the professional way of doing it. And that seems to be a correlation with all of the successful producer, engineers, and mixers that I know, that they don't leave comments under videos going, you're not doing it properly.
Yeah, right.
They literally just deal with it, because what their job is to capture what the artist's vision is.
If the artist has a vision, you know. So I'm complaining more and more about bands in metal just sending out the DI tracks and MIDI notes and letting the mixer decide how they're gonna sound. I don't like that. So if a band has a vision, has whatever, a guitar rig or something, of course you should at least try to record exactly that. And that's something that I had to learn. So in my early days, I was probably less mature, and I was rather trying to go for a safe bet, something I knew, hey, this amp with that microphone, that speaker, I know it will work. So I was pushing people a lot more towards what I knew would work for me. And what I've learned over the years is exactly what you just said, is to listen to what people bring into the studio, be relaxed about it, and be mature enough to just go like, yeah, you know, this is going to work, and not get nervous. Even if it's weird. Yeah, that has made me a lot better. So, yes. On the other hand, it's like, I'm doing a lot of, just like you, I'm doing a lot of courses. I have an academy. So of course, if people are starting out, you got to give them some basic rules. If you just tell people, hey, do whatever you want and, just, wing it, that's probably not going to work. I mean, there are some basic things you got to understand. And then from a certain point, once you've managed to get the basics right, you can try the weird stuff.
That's the thing, isn't it? I've noticed that most commentary on recording and mixing and mastering, all this stuff, is always based on where that particular engineer or producer is at in their career. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get sent stuff, I'm sure you do too, where it's recorded in a certain way, and you realize that they've got to this level and they know how to do it, and they're very like maybe everything being really timed so perfectly and tuned so perfectly that instead of going, it just kind of goes crack. Everything's tight and small sounding. Yeah. And then you get a little bit older, because I've done it too. I did it 25 years ago when I first learned Pro Tools. I just edited everything tight. Actually longer than 25. And then I started going, oh, wait there, this sounds better when it's a little bit looser. Oh, maybe I shouldn't correct it. And then, and you start realizing that going to Zeppelin, for instance, it was like, here's the kick drum, and then the bass plays a nanosecond later. So it's kind of that boom. I'm exaggerating, but that was feel. And the guitar could be on top rather than everything being exactly on the one. And I've said that in a video, and underneath somebody said to me, that's not right. Everything should be in time with each other.
Yeah. The answer, as usual, is it depends. And I guess the perfect engineer just always has the right feeling for whatever is right in that moment. We never stop learning because we always fail, but that's what we're trying to do basically. It's just to realize, hey, here it can be more loose. It's fine. Let go. Here it needs to be maybe tighter. Here we can go for the crazy guitar tone, but maybe here we need something more conservative. But that instinct, I think, is what you gain over the years. It's just to realize, hey, this feels right. And then the longer you do it, the more that instinct is kind of true.
So marvelous. Of course, we came here to talk about mics, and as usual, I took it in all kinds of different directions, and we talked a little bit about AI and, of course, about the Taylor Young course. Before we go, any new wonderful microphones you might want to tell us about?
This is actually top secret, so don't tell anybody. And this is the first time I'm showing this.
You know what? You showed me a photo the other day. I didn't know how big it was. Now you're holding it, I can see. That's awesome.
This is a prototype of a ribbon mic voiced for guitars, for close miking guitars, that I'm doing in collaboration with AEA. It's going to be called the Claw because it's going to sound like this. And so far, I'm very much impressed. It's going to take a few more weeks. And but now I've spilled the beans. Dedicated guitar microphone that sounds wonderful for all kinds of, not only metal, like all kinds of close mic guitars. And it also looks amazing, don't you think? You'll have to check it out, Warren. You're going to love it.
Because it's a guitar mic, I'll use it on guitar, acoustic guitar, bass, overhead.
Of course, abuse it.
Yes. I'll use it everywhere that it's supposed to be and not supposed to be.
Use it and abuse it. I'm looking forward to hearing.
And vocals.
Yeah. And vocals, yeah, of course.
And we won't do a metal song.
I'm not even joking. I really want you to do that. So wonderful.
I'm sure it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
I'm super excited, and we love the AEA guys. Obviously, Julie, who runs the company now, is lovely, but Wes was the man. Such an incredible talent. And the fact, if anybody knows anything about AEA, Wes Dooley back in the 60s, maybe 50s, but definitely back in the 60s, basically able to get all of the RCA NOS, new old stock. So a lot of these microphones have components from original RCA microphones that they've got thousands and thousands of parts. And obviously, even if they're starting to run low or whatever, they are the guys. They're the people that know how to make these microphones.
They're the ribbon guys, yeah. And it's all handmade in Pasadena. Great people, great company, highly recommended. And yeah, and the Claw is going to be something special. Actually based on one of West's designs, but then we tweaked it, and you'll see and hear.
Well, wonderful. So, bunch of different homework for people. You can go down below and see the Taylor Young course. You can also go to Kohle Audio Cult, and I suppose stay tuned because this will come out before the microphone comes out. Let's have one more look at that lovely microphone.
Oh, yeah, of course. On Produce Like a Pro and on my channel, you will hear this very soon.
All right. Thanks, Kristian. You rock.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Ciao. Tschüss. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.